Inner arts are one of the main components of many top builds out there. You really don't want to miss out on these because they enable some crazy damage numbers and even complete new functionalities that you never thought you would get. Plus many more on top, so we're gonna take a look at the best inner arts you want to get your hands on in Where Winds Meet, so let's dive right in. And surprisingly, one of the first tomes you get access to, the Adaptive Steel, is also one of the best in the game, especially for strategic sword builds. This is something that you get as the third unlock in your Oddities collection, but it also provides different bonuses depending on the type of weapon that you have equipped. So if it's a sword, you get an extra chance to apply a stack of bleed. If it's spear, you ignore some of the enemy's defenses. Meanwhile, dual blades get a martial arts skill damage boost after a perfect dodge. And finally, the great sword has increased crit damage for charge skills and parry counters. But this will synergize very well with a strategic sword Heaven's Quaker spear build so that you can apply those bleed stacks even easier. Of course, those provide damage over time, but they also get consumed for spikes of damage with the sword, and you can even take advantage of that with the spear and another inner art we're gonna check in just a little bit to extend and increase our buffs by a lot more on the target. Plus, of course, we get other bonuses here for weapon switching, so whenever you see dual weapon skill bonuses here like speed, damage increase and whatnot, keep in mind that's going to be for the weapon switching skill and not dual swords and whatnot. Plus even longer lingering buff at the end of it, though that's going to be a heavier investment. Of course, we also talked about Morale Chant before, one of the best universal, if not the best universal buffs in the game, a very high uptime, and you get both physical damage increase and healing increase from it. On top of that, it's also an early acquisition, so you can either buy it from the vendor very close here to the Blissful Retreat waypoint. This is going to be the more costly option, as it will set you back about 5,000 Echo Jade for the 10 pages. However, if you want to wait for a little bit longer, or well, much longer, you can also buy it from the other vendor right here in Kaifeng for only 200 Echo Jades a pop, but this is going to require a level 6 in Kaifeng Exploration Discovery, so just keep that in mind. Plus, you get other bonuses if you further upgrade this, even extra physical penetration, more physical attack, extending the duration of the buff all the way to getting additional attacks or even heals if you max it out. But since we were on the subject of going with a full bleed build, one of my favorites is the Wolfchaser's art tome, which by the way you get from a chest, literally from the same skill theft mission, during which you also unlock the Heaven's Quaker spear. So right here, after you have stolen the skill from the boss in the area, you can just backtrack a little bit in the same location, go downstairs 2 levels, and you should see this ramp going up to the side over here to the left. If you go up that, turn around a little bit and then jump down here through the gap, you should find the chest that immediately rewards that to you. And what this does is, well, it's a couple of things. One is that it reduces the number of combo hits required for the martial arts skill to trigger its bonuses, so from 5 and 10 to only 4 and 8, meaning that it's much easier to reach river flow. However, its second component is even stronger and makes it synergize even better with strategic sword, because if the target also has bleed applied to it, you're going to have a massively increased chance to get an extra combo count increased by 1. So at 5 bleed stacks, that chance will be 100%. Let me show you what that means in real terms. If we were to attack an enemy with our Q skill on the spear, the max number of combos we can hope for is going to be just 6 for one single target, meaning that no matter what, in this case, if we follow up with the special attack, the max possible buff we can hope for is the intermediary one at only 15%. However, if we apply the Wolfchaser internal arts and first apply a stack of 5 bleeds on the target with the strategic sword and then swap to our spear, you can see that one single Q attack is enough to get at least 10 combo hits because of that secondary bonus on it. Normally it should be like 12, but I missed one of the attacks and that is why. But since our maximum new stacks is 8, this means we have more than enough to basically just get the full benefit, so the full 20% damage increase, as well as another stack of bleeding on the target itself, of course from the river flow mechanic on this ability. So this is going to make weapon swapping between the two weapons even better, and of course we already talked about the adaptive strike from before, so these two right here can already make a very strong build from relatively early on if you're going with this setup. You should also keep in mind that many of the skill theft missions, such as the ones for Inkwell Fan and also the Panacea Fan, do have some of these accompanying inner arts that you can get from the chest or one of the chests inside of that mission. Such as, for example, in the case of the Inkwell Fan, if you go to this chest right here, which is pretty much going to be inside of the gap right before one of the boss encounters, you're going to get the Flying Gourds. Meanwhile, in the case of the Panacea Fan, literally the last chest in the area will give you a legendary Royal Remedy internal art if you want to specialize more into healing. We're gonna talk more about healing a little bit later in the video. Now, I'm not sure about you, but I have a weakness for the Nameless Sword and Nameless Spear combo just because it seems so flashy and cinematic. It's one of the coolest and it's also early, but there's a strong combo we can get for it. So if you go to the same palace mission during which you unlock, the Lucky 17 boss encounter, you're going to get a couple of tomes. One of them is going to be the Vital Leech tome from defeating the boss at the end. However, there's another one that's even stronger for the Nameless Spear, and that's going to be the Mountain's Might. So this is going to be acquired by unlocking 5 chests around the main building. 2 of them we're going to find right here before entering the catacombs. So one of them is going to be right here on the upper balcony going atop these branches. At the end of it, you're going to find the first one. In my case, it was the last, as I discovered this last. However, second one will be further inside of the building before destroying the lower section of the floor. You're going to pay attention here in front of you, and that's going to be another one that you can grab from the chest. Meanwhile, for the remaining 3, one of them is going to be after using the elevator for the first time. You're going to go inside of this room with a bunch of enemies. And once you're done with that, you're pretty much going to have to pay attention to the side here. Behind this pillar, there should be another chest giving you another portion of the Mountain's Might. From this point on, once you repair the elevator and are able to take the downstairs path all the way at the bottom, there are 2 more chests right in the main enemy area. So once you dispatch them, you will find them on both of the sides here going up these stairs in the backside. Once done, grab it from the chest and then head over to the opposite side. Parallel to this, you're going to find another chest in a similar position, and now this is going to fully unlock the Mountain's Might for you. Its effect is that it further buffs your martial arts ability, your Q ability, to now also get another endurance cost reduction buff by 20%, which by the way stacks with the one already provided by it that was 10% before, plus the 30 to endurance you get upon casting it. So what this does is that it's going to make your charged heavy attack ability with the Nameless Spear even stronger, since we can hold it for a lot longer. So let me demonstrate. If we were to attack this enemy, either stun it or slow down time, doesn't really matter, perform a special attack so we can trigger our R ability much quicker, followed by a quick Q so that we can either stun it or at least get the endurance back plus the reduction, and from this point on charge up the heavy attack, which is essentially going to last for a lot longer. And as you can see, we can literally one-shot the target's first phase in like just mere seconds. Absolutely one of my favorite playstyles. Yes, it is going to be quite a static setup, so you cannot move too much with it, but man is it so fun to pull off, especially with the goose ability that you can get early on anyway. Fully expecting this to become even crazier in the end game, because we can further gain even more endurance, more damage and attack bonus from it, and even like reduced cooldown depending if we also control or silence the target. So yeah, this is just going to be absolutely crazy in the end game. Hitting enemies will even restore endurance with it, so you can imagine what type of damage you can deal with it in the end game. And moving on to number 5, since we talked about Nameless Sword, Sword Morph is one of the best inner arts for it. What this does is that while under the effect of the shield provided by the last follow-up attack on your martial arts ability, if you unleash a charged attack, instead of only throwing 1 wave of energy, you're going to unleash 3 right after the other. So this is already going to be a massive DPS increase right from the very beginning. It's a very fun playstyle. It has a lot of jump in and out. I just love this playstyle and it's quite straightforward. If you somehow decide to focus on upgrading this, eventually you're going to have an even easier time of unleashing those waves of energy without even having to have a shield on, all the way to having follow-up attacks after, plus increasing the damage on the way. But again, this is going to be quite costly because it's a legendary inner art. By the way, for boss battles in PvE, this synergizes really well with the battle anthem. You can get this also very early on by simply liberating this Buddha fort right here and rescuing the NPCs inside, point at which you should have this unlocked. This makes your charge skills to have a damage increase against bosses by 10%, but that can be further buffed and even take advantage of even in PvP. As far as other similar legendary inner arts for other weapon types, we can of course get the Echoes of Oblivion for Infernal Twin Blades relatively early just from the main story, so this is going to be given to you automatically by following it early on, and it's going to be really good at bypassing some of the enemy's defenses. However, because I recently switched to the strategic sword, I fell in love with this one right here, the Sword Horizon, which gives us some insane follow-up attacks to every single one of our attacks. So in this case, not only is it going to be your martial arts ability that gets another attack at the end of it, that's going to be this pretty much like charge up into the ground that pulls targets in and detonates your attacks. The special skill gets an extra thrust at the end that makes it even easier to stack bleeds, and of course our charged heavy just has a launch that further deals more damage, though it's a little bit more tricky to hit enemies with. However, this is just going to make it so much easier to back-to-back stack bleeds between abilities that you never had before without it. So to actually grab this in the first place, you will need to make your way to the Ghost Light Market right here below, the Kaifeng Prefecture. I'm going to show you how to get here way before you even unlock that region in just a little bit, but the specific location we have to be in is right here, the Antiques shop on this side of the map. If you equip the mask that you got once you got here, I'm going to show that too, you can go inside and speak to the vendor who's currently hanging by the ceiling. And what you need to purchase is at least like 20 or so unknown old books, because every single one of them has a chance to give you one of the tomes of the 10 that you need to learn our internal art ability. So you may be lucky and only require like 10 to 20. In my case, it was closer to 30. And every single one of them cost like 12,500. So after like 2 to 300k spent here, you should unlock that ability right away. I will have to say, in terms of damage, it's even bigger than any of the others just on its own, simply because you have so many follow-up attacks, and because we have it, it's so much easier to back-to-back stack stacks of bleeds for every single follow-up attack that we do, because now we have interchangeable detonations and combos between these abilities with the follow-ups. Now, like I promised, if you want to get this early and if you want to get to the Ghostlight Market early, what you need to do is head over and start the side mission called Bounty Trouble right here at the border. So you're going to find it on this side of the map. During it, you're going to get ambushed and immediately transported in this location, so you can unlock the waypoint, of course, and just do the mission over there if you want to. Otherwise, just come back at a later date at a different hour other than 5 a.m. If you also follow the mission during the 5 a.m. hour, you can get another pretty interesting one, the internal art called Trapped Beast that I covered in the video before this, so you can go ahead and check that one out. That one was pretty good as a sort of cheat death mechanic that works for tanks. When you're low HP, you're pretty much going to get some healing back, and it works with some of your other healing mechanics as well. Now, there are a couple more that we can get from some of the open world bosses early on for different weapons. So, for example, if you defeat the Taoist over here at the Path of Karma, this world boss will drop with the Esoteric Revival, which is one of the best that you're going to want for a healer build, especially one that uses the Panacea build. This is going to just make it so that after reviving targets, you give them a healing over time effect, but there are other bigger bonuses that they will get, and even you will get healing with some of the bigger upgrades over there, plus much more on top. And you can also get one for the Thunder Cry Blade, so your great sword from one of the first world bosses on this side of the map, the one with the puppets basically. So that's going to be the Shadow Puppeteer. If you defeat him, he's going to give you the exquisite scenery, which is just going to make your counter attacks much stronger, and charging heavy attacks after that is going to be much easier. So overall, very useful for a tank playstyle. However, a special mention that I will have to make is for the two poison sort of internal arts that From my testing, we're not quite as strong, and probably that's because they need a lot more upgrading, but they are top DPS builds in the China version, so I will cover them as well. You will notice that a lot of these side quests, especially the blue ones, will feature types of tomes that you can unlock by defeating those bosses, but I'm going to focus specifically on the one over here at the Mysterious Colossus in the Gleaming Abyss. So there are two very strong inner arts we can get here. One is from defeating the boss itself, which is going to give us the Divine Roulette. This is going to be a pretty decent one actually, because after performing a successful deflection, we either get a skill damage, a guaranteed critical hit, or a guaranteed affinity hit on our next hit after that deflection. However, the internal cooldown is 30 seconds, and I believe you can only reduce it to like 24 if you fully max this out. So it's not quite as consistent, but is part of some of the builds later on, so you can use it. Meanwhile, for the other one, we have the Bitter Seasons. This is going to be after the boss encounter. So once you step through the fog door after defeating it, go to the other side and take the upper path. Eventually, you're going to find a house, and instead of the chest inside of it, you're going to get the Bitter Seasons. And this is going to have a 10% chance to apply poison on hit. It stacks up to 5, but it also reduces the target's physical defenses initially by 0.6%, but that can be doubled. So eventually, we can get a 7% physical defense reduction. This is going to be really good. However, I noticed that in the live version of the game, the consistency of applying the poison over time was not as good as it used to be in the early access I played last week. For some reason, last week it was easier to trigger those poison debuffs, but there is a bonus in there if you upgrade this around the middle, I believe. It's pretty much going to be this one that increases that chance from 10% to 25%, so it may actually help a little bit more. Another poison debuff that kinda does something similar I've noticed in the China version is the Fivefold Bleed. So this also has the same chance of applying a poison on the target. And of course at 5 stacks, this is going to be removed to deal piercing damage once. So it can be good at some extra bursts of damage. I tested this out with the bleed from our strategic sword, and they are separate bleeds on the target. So you can literally have 2 different types of bleeds on the target. 5 from the Fivefold and 5 from strategic, and this one is going to have its own effect with that piercing damage explosion. But unfortunately, the damage I noticed was not quite as big. I mean, the ticks over time were definitely much stronger than that. But if you want to grab it, you can have it from the side mission called Faltering Flame right here from the Imperial Temple over in the Kaifeng Prefecture. So if you head over to this side of the map and talk to the monk in the area, he's going to ask you to find 3 of his former disciples, I guess, which you will find within the same courtyard. So 2 of them will be right here northwest of the location, 1 will be inside of the large building. In this case, you're going to want to talk to the first one. Now, once you get back to the monk, you're going to have a sequence with him and a mini game. Then you're going to want to spend the time or fast track the time to the next day, point at which you're going to notice the second target appearing on the map and the waypoint. Rinse and repeat for all 3 of them up until the mission is over, and you are going to get that unlocked right away. In any case, we've got a couple more that are also really strong, one of which is going to be Insightful Strike, also really good for a strategic sword build. This is going to be something that you get from the same archery master that we encountered at the start of the game. However, we're going to have to find its second location, which will be right here at the Encircling Lake, further south of the first region. So if you head over to this specific side of the map, you should encounter the guy in the area. Complete his archery challenge, and that's going to give you the Insightful Strike tome that you can then learn the internal art with. And what this does is that when you deal affinity damage, which is kind of like critical damage but not really, then you're going to get a concentration buff, and this is going to then further increase affinity damage and also even give you damage reduction. However, it's very difficult to test this at this stage in the game. At sub level like 50, you don't really have much affinity, if at all, like 1 or 2%, so you're not going to trigger this that much. This, however, will become a lot more important in the end game. It's part of the top builds as far as I can see, so it's totally going to be worth it. We can eventually increase its occurrence and trigger rate, plus gain even bigger buffs from it. We can even like recover HP and whatnot, so overall will be a lot better in the end game. And finally, on our last point, which is also part of one of my favorite missions in the whole game, that's going to be the breaking point, one of the best options for any build that uses Infernal Twin Blades. You're going to absolutely love this. However, this is also going to be something more aimed towards endgame, since you're going to be lacking critical hits. But you're going to get this from a relatively early on story from the first region. So after you progressed at least until you finished that, let's say, yin-yang boss encounter, I'm not gonna say which one, but it's definitely the most shiny of them all, you can head over back on this side of the map right here, close to the burned down pagoda, close to the blissful waypoints, and you will see that an important character's sword has remained stuck into the ground. And what you can do is touch it, which is going to let you enter a dream. Follow this dream. It's going to be extremely cinematic. It's one of the best looking areas in the game, and the fights are just amazing. But once you are done with that fight, the boss will drop this stone for you, giving you the breakpoint. Hitting exhausted enemies with a critical hit applies stacks of disintegration, stacking up to 3 times, and each one grants physical penetration and critical damage bonus. So this is going to work really great for any build that uses, well, I guess in this case, the Infernal Twin Blades. But that about concludes today's video with some of the best internal arts. I'm pretty sure they should cover the best of them all, but keep in mind that you don't want to upgrade every single one of these, obviously, not just yet. They are going to be a very costly endeavor. I wanted to show you the locations so that once you're ready, you can grab them and then decide which one of them you want to fully upgrade depending on the playstyle and build you're going to be using. But this is pretty much it with the video. As always, if you found it useful, don't forget to subscribe, activate the notification bell, and leave a like on the video, and I'll see you guys next time.